PNR Networks is a member of Patreon. Show your love for our shows by joining our ongoing fundraising campaign and get some fantastic perks in return. Check it out and become a Patreon sponsor. You can sign up at patreon.com, patreon.com/PNR Networks. And thanks for your support.
This podcast is a member of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry. No E's. That's Blueberry, BLUBRRY.com. Blueberry.com.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
It's Kim versus TC in the battle of the lists.
My list is better.
My list is better.
My list is better.
No, it's not. My list is better.
Kim or TC, who has the better list? From Subject Cinema, this is Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
Hey guys, welcome to another week here on Front Row 5 and 10, brought to you by the good people that bring you Subject Cinema. That would be me and him, the me being Kim Brown.
And the him being TC Kirkham. Welcome.
Hi.
It is June 8th, 2018.
Yep.
We're on Friday again this week because we haven't got a Subject Cinema ready until a week from now. Mm-hmm. So, because we're taking a couple weeks off for that. But we're going to have fun with this one.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
This is my idea.
Yes, it was.
If you'd like to contribute a list, you can win a prize, get your name on the show, get your name on the site, all kinds of things. Please write us, frontrow@PNRNetworks.com. Mm-hmm. My pick this week, I suggested we name our top 10 all-time favorite stand-up comics.
Yep.
Now, the question is, how did we interpret that?
Mm-hmm. Well, since you came up with the list, I think you should explain it.
Well, how did you interpret it?
I interpreted it as people that mostly did or do stand-up. They could have become actors later on, but they had to go back to stand up every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And it's basically my criteria was if it made me laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, just sometimes just thinking of the person and their jokes made me laugh. So
my criteria was that the comic in question had to spark at least one of what Kim and I call episodes mm-hmm. in me, which is where I'm laughing so hard I can't stop and often can't breathe. I did not include the following. This is just how my personal was. I did not include comedians turned actors unless they continued their stand-up careers. Mm-hmm. So Steve Martin is out, Jim Carrey is out, mm-hmm. So on and so forth. Because they didn't really continue their stand-up careers once they got successful in the movies.
Right.
I did not include comedy troupes.
Right.
And people therein. I did not include improvisational comics when they are performing in an improv environment, such as the cast of Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I also didn't include musical comics and satirists. That would include people like Weird Al Yankovic, Mark Russell, Tom Lehrer, Alan mm-hmm. Sherman. Their music. We'll do a comedy music thing sometime, and mm-hmm. then we'll touch on those. So, I have some runners-up, too, when I get to mine. So,
okay.
Go ahead. Kick us off, dear.
Okay, my number 10 is someone that he's gone on to do, TV work and movie work. Going to be in, voice-wise, in a movie that's coming up quite soon. But he still does stand-up, and I still think he's really funny. My number 10 is Brad Garrett. I remember seeing him as a stand-up comedian first before, he hit it big on a show like Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, he was the grand champion on Star Search their second year. So,
mm-hmm. And I've seen him do stand-up other places. I think he's really funny. He's another one that does his whole act isn't based on impressions, but he does do a few.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite is his Herman Munster. It really works really well because he is so tall, just like the late Fred Gwynne.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got the whole laugh and a lot of the physical movements, and I really like that. He's going to be doing the voice of Eeyore in the movie Christopher Robin.
He's doing a good job of it, too, from what I've seen in the trailer. Yeah.
Yes, very good. And that looks like it's going to be a terrific movie, even though it does look like it's going to just, toss you to the ground and kick you in the feels repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
But my number 10, Brad Garrett.
Okay, before we get to my top 10, I have some runners-up, 7 of them.
Okay. All right.
Because I love these guys, but some of them are not really doing comedy as much anymore, and others, I just like other people just a hair better. My runners-up are Bill Engvall, who never fails to completely crack me up, the delightfully weird Emo Phillips, who I've always thought he was very strange and very funny. Dana Carvey, who was terrific as a stand-up comic, and he doesn't do it much anymore. He still makes an appearance every now and then, but he focuses mostly on acting. The same with Eddie Murphy. I love Eddie Murphy's stand-up, and he was always good at it. But again, he's focusing on mostly acting.
Yep.
Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is perhaps the funniest of the new generation of comedians. I think he's really great. Waylon Flowers and Madam. Now, I know Madam is now being controlled by another puppeteer, but back in the 70s, Waylon Flower never failed to convulse me with Madam. And the other one is the entire line of Borscht Belt comedians who are always just kind of making you smile, like Henny Youngman, Jackie Mason, Don Rickles, all those people. They weren't nearly enough to be in my favorites. But my favorites look like this. My number 10 was an interesting revelation the first time we saw him, my mom and I. My mother absolutely adored his comedy. She thought he was a riot. I got more chuckles out of him and smiles, but he also got to me a couple times where I had episodes. I haven't seen him around. I know he's acting and writing and doing all that stuff now, but he's still doing stand-up too. My number 10 is Stephen Wright. Stephen Wright is perhaps the oddest duck in my group here. Well, maybe no, there's one more. And with his whole matter-of-fact style, totally deadpan. Everything the guy said was deadpan, and says. He's still around. Some of his jokes were just like, oh wow, that's just surreal. They were too hip for the room.
Definitely.
Like the whole, it's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it, which my mother thought was hysterical. She laughed herself sick at that. I just love him and his oddball delivery, and he was always fun to watch. And I don't know how he managed to maintain that frown the entire thing when he heard gales of laughter coming at you from the crowd. My number 10, Stephen Wright.
Okay. My number 9, a Canadian comedian that I thought was screamingly funny, a gentleman named Mike McDonald. Mike did his was a lot of observational humor, although he would get a little bit, it would be very pointed observational humor. A lot of it was talking about his family, his dad. He was really, really funny. He had a really cool style. Mike is unfortunately no longer with us.
Yeah, he passed away young, too.
Yeah, he did. I thought he was really, really funny. I just liked his style. I liked the fact that he seemed like a person you could sit down and have a chat with, and he would be like the type that would regale you with all kinds of stories and just be a really fun person to listen to. So my number 9 is Mike McDonald.
Yeah, I like him. I hadn't even thought of him. My number 9, another comic that my mother and I cracked up together about, but we have a lot of friends that love this guy and that have been to see him a number of times. We have not been to any of his shows. He is what you would best describe as an observational prop comic. He uses outlandish props, most notably a hammer and a watermelon, to get his point across. Because some of his stuff...
And to get watermelon across.
And to get watermelon across on the front rows of the auditorium. he was always killingly funny, and you know, they did have that changeover in the middle, because it's actually two people. It's two brothers that the younger one took it over later.
Yeah.
My number 9 is Gallagher. He is, you can't just listen to him, because he's always got props on set of all different styles and types. And his observations are, you know, everyday stuff around him.
Yep.
But of course, he's got the Sledge-O-Matic, which is his trademark, with the whole watermelon thing, and
anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, he smashed other stuff too.
I mean, and yeah, well, he did. But I mean, the watermelon, perhaps, and the pumpkin. He's done pumpkin a few times too.
Birthday cake.
Yeah,
That made me cry. I was like, no, cake, no.
And he's even when he's not using the props, he's killingly funny, and I mean, just really good at it. Stacy and Jen have been to his shows a number of times when he's been around here, and they always know to take the tarp with them, because they usually get front 2 or 3 rows and have the big plastic tarp with them. My number 9, Gallagher, both versions.
Okay. My number 8 is a gentleman named Kevin Meaney. Kevin was... there was just something... It's really weird, because he wasn't from New England, but he had a very New England style.
He had a huge following up here, too.
Yeah. The way he spoke, and when he would do his routines and stuff like that, especially doing his whole thing where he would be talking about his mother and his mother's whole "that's just not right" thing that she would throw at him.
You know, comedians are successful when they work their way into your vocabulary, and we use that all the time.
We do.
Yeah.
He was really, really good. Just had a way of he was another one that, you know, he was one of those people that you definitely felt like you could sit down, and if you were out with him for drinks or something like that, he'd just regale you with stories all night, and your ribs would be sore by the time the evening was over. Unfortunately, Kevin's not with us any longer.
Yeah, he passed away young too.
Yeah,
he was only 60, I think, when he passed away. Yeah.
My number 8, Kevin Meaney.
My number 8 is, I think, one of the most unfairly unsung comedians of all time. She is someone who has never failed to completely leave me on the floor. She never really got the kind of TV breaks in the when she first started in the late 80s. She has become mostly known as a comedy writer for other comedians as well as for TV. She's done a lot of that stuff, but she continues to do stand-up, and she's funny as hell when she does it. I can't get enough of Carol Leifer. Carol Leifer's routine about the Bloomies ladies is so damn funny. We will be on the floor with those voices and those expressions. You do one so well. Go ahead.
Harry, get off me. Just trying to picture these women have sex. You know, these women, these Botoxed, you know, well, actually back in the day it wasn't Botox, it was
plastic surgery
where you just, their skin was pulled so tight it was like kind of terrifying, really.
She only had like, I think maybe two specials of her own on cable. And she's damn fun. I like her better than most of the female comics out there, like Judy Gold and Judy Tenuta, and you know, some of the more recent ones like well, I don't like Chelsea Handler at all, but there's other people out there. Carol is just a step above all of them. She was funny. She could think on her feet when she was on with Carson or Leno or any of the talk shows. And she never failed to have great stories. Stories about... The only person I can think of that might be her equal in story range would be Judy Gold. She's good at the stories, too.
Yeah.
And so is... what's the one that keeps getting in trouble, herself in trouble? Kathy Griffin. There's so... Carol is just a riot, and if you've never seen any of her stuff or you're not familiar with her, look up some of the old clips on YouTube. I guarantee you will be dying. Number 8, Carol Leifer.
Okay. Number 7 on my list is somebody that I have actually really liked for a long time as a stand-up comedian. He's gone into acting and voice acting. And is...
a lot of people, comedians especially, go into voice acting also.
They do, because they can do all kinds of funny voices, and they also can improvise, really well. And that really came in handy on the film that I think that was the first voice acting gig I remember seeing him, or hearing him, I suppose would be a better way to put it. My number 7 is Mario Cantone.
Oh, jeez.
I love Mario. Mario is awesome. He is so funny.
I gotta be honest, I've never seen his stand-up, so...
I've seen his stand-up, and it's very...
And he's from around here, which we see him... We've actually seen him get off the train at Beachmont a couple of times.
I did! I swear I did. It was Christmas, and I was like, was that Mario Cantone? I just remember standing there going... That was, like, my brain was, like, divided between, that was Mario Cantone, and I can't feel my face! Christmas time in New England, you gotta love it. But...
Hasn't been that cold the last several years, though.
No, but he's got a kind of a frenetic style, but it's not frenetic as in running all over the place, it's frenetic as in the way he changes subjects. Sometimes, from one to another. He kind of hopscotches back and forth between things. Yeah. And he's so funny. He's one of those type of people that I definitely could see sitting down with and having, like, a total gossip fest about your friends and stuff like that. And... He's
not the character he did in Surf's Up.
No.
Okay.
No, I realize that. No, he's not a little tiny bird. I know that. Thank you.
But that's what you're describing his personality as, is that kind of character. I don't know if it's that bad.
Yeah, but I definitely think that they took traits from his personality and wrote them into that character.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Who was actually a really funny character in the criminally underseen Surf's Up, because that movie was a riot.
Yeah.
And that was a film that used a lot of improv in the dialogue.
Yeah, it did.
And that was part of what he did so well and does so well. I think he's a riot. I really do. My number 7, Mario Cantone.
My number 7 is irreplaceable. As the queen of the female comics for many, 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 many years. I was always a fan, and she never failed to absolutely convulse me, no matter whether she was, digging on the Broyle family, Barry Manilow, current trends of the day, always giving her husband Edgar a bad time. And stressing the whole gossip thing and her whole, can we talk? Mm-hmm. Number 7, the inimitable Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers, God love her. She'd been through so much the last 20 years of her life, 30 years of her life. It started with The Late Show, which turned out to be a disaster, and then Edgar's suicide, and then later on she had she came back with her daytime show, which did really well, and then of course it all ended suddenly when she was having more plastic surgery, and she wasn't supposed to be a severe thing, and we lost her just like that, and she was...
Unfortunately, her death proves that, people said, like, oh, it was such a minor surgery, blah, blah, blah. No surgery is minor.
Yeah.
That's a dumb statement. It's dumb.
She was just delightful, and in the last several years, when she was teamed with daughter Melissa as the red carpet host, usually, she was killingly funny, and she was great on the Fashion Disaster, Fashion Police, whatever it was. But her routines in the 70s and 80s, and I mean, she, to our generation, also knows her as the voice of the narrator in The Adventures of Letterman from the Electric Company. Which was the first place I really knew her from.
Yeah. It's weird because that's the first place I knew her from too, and I didn't know who she was.
And later on it transitioned. And, I mean, everybody that came before her as a comedian helped break that ground. People like Toady Fields, Phyllis Diller, Moms Mabley. Mm-hmm. And then she just took it and ran with it and turned it into a super career, and she's always going to be one of my favorites. Number 7, Joan Rivers.
Okay. Number 6 on my list is somebody that, I really liked his stuff because I liked the fact that he went out and skewered certain people, and I thought it was funny at the time, simply because I disliked this certain group of people.
Okay.
My number 6 is Jeff Altman.
Really? Okay. I was never a big fan of Jeff as a stand-up. I like him as an actor.
I liked his stand-up. I liked him as a person. He seemed like a friendly, nice guy. And I've seen
Yes, but then you have to remember Pink Lady and Jeff.
Well, you can remember Pink Lady and Jeff.
You've seen them all, too. We watched them on Brilliant but Cancelled.
I've blocked it out of my memory. It never happened.
It's out on DVD.
It never happened. Anyway, I liked his stand-up simply because he just has this very easygoing style, and I just liked the fact that you felt like he was somebody that you were sitting next to at a bar, listening to them, be entertaining and all that stuff like that. He didn't come off like he was fake.
Yeah.
Put it that way. And the fact that one of the routines I remember him doing was this whole thing where he was talking about and severely skewering the PTL.
Yeah.
And I know some people might be like, wait, what? You're Catholic. What's the deal here?
They were easy to skewer at the time, so.
Oh, so easy.
Everybody did that.
And it was, see, the thing is, there's always, I don't know, I can't speak for any other Catholics in the world. I won't even try. In my house, there was kind of a, we were Catholics, and that was, it wasn't shoved down anybody else's throat.
Right.
But the PTL stuff, that was those people. That was, that sort of Irish Catholic attitude.
I had a neighbor lady that was huge into them and donated every month to them. Obscene amounts of money, and we were like, oh, Lord. Yeah.
Jeff's routines about the PTL, specifically about Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, were
vicious.
Oh, yeah. And never failed to crack me up.
I don't know.
I don't know what that says about that or me, but I liked his style. I mean, I know you're probably still pissed at him for playing the Weather Wizard in one of those awful things they did in the 70s.
No. I've always liked Jeff as an actor. He's a great talk show guest. But his stand-up never really jumped out at me. Okay. Sometimes he was good. I mean, he was pretty much a regular on Solid Gold for a couple of years in the 80s.
Yep.
And he was good. But definitely wouldn't have crossed my radar as my favorite. No.
I liked him. I thought he was really funny. My number 6, Jeff Altman.
My number 6 is kind of a cheater because I had to honestly decide whether I was going to put this person on here. Because, again, like Gallagher, he is primarily a prop comic. But it was done in such a way that was totally unique. And he doesn't tell jokes. He can't. If you've not heard of his real name is Sam Wills. He's a brilliant performance artist, mime, comedy writer, everything. And he was a smash on America's Got Talent 2 years ago. We had the delightful opportunity to see him in concert a couple years ago. And it is why Tape Face is my number 6 comic.
See, I thought of him as more of a performance artist.
Yeah, me too. But when I thought about it, I'm like, well, I put Gallagher on here.
Yeah.
And I liked him better than Gallagher. His whole thing is he literally does his whole show with his mouth taped.
Yep.
It's mine.
A big strip of black electrical tape on his mouth.
Or sometimes silver. Depends. Yeah. He is one of the funniest people I've ever seen. Whether he's a stand-up comic is hard to honestly defend because he doesn't tell jokes. He does do prop jokes that do have a point, which you know when you see him. Because, I mean, if you've not seen him live, please buy tickets if he comes to your area because he is unbelievably funny in person. Except for the balloons. I hate balloons and the balloons at the end were just okay. But the entire show, especially the bit with Blame It on the Boogie, which was just a freaking riot. He's just brilliant. And I don't know why. I mean, he's been in comedy for years and he just hit on this particular gimmick about 4 years ago. Yeah. And it took off thanks to America's Got Talent.
I can't even... I really wish I put him on there, but I do consider him more of a
yeah, see, I do too, but I can't because he makes me laugh so hard.
See, that's the thing. The Blame It on the Boogie thing, I know you really like that, but the thing that gets me that he did, and he did it on America's Got Talent, and he did it in the stand-up routines that we saw, the concerts that we saw, was the whole reenacting the pottery scene from Ghost with Unchained Melody playing in the background and all that. And all I could think of when I saw that, as I'm watching it, and
that
I'm
was
laughing,
funny as hell, too.
and I'm laughing with tears in my eyes, all I could think was Patrick Swayze is in heaven busting a gut.
I know.
That's a terrific choice. That is a really terrific
He's awesome.
choice.
Number 6, please check him out if you haven't seen him, Tape Face.
Yeah. And his oven mitt duet of Endless Love.
God.
Is,
Goldfish oven mitt.
yeah. It's truly...
the first time we saw him, we were sitting there watching AGT. He comes out. We couldn't figure out his shtick. He starts doing that. Kim is like staring at the TV going like, huh? Like a dog. I'm on the floor. I was laughing so hard. The guy is just wonderful.
I was like, I can't tell if this is brave or insane.
Well, he came in 5th place.
Yeah,
You can't beat
yeah.
that. Or 6th. 5th or 6th.
You've mentioned the person at my number 5 already. I put him higher because I think he's awesome. Stephen Wright.
Yeah, he is.
He is so funny with that just very deadpan. I wouldn't say monotone. It's close to monotone, but it's not quite.
Well, he does variate from time to time, but not much.
Not much, no.
Think of Art Garfunkel on Quaaludes, and you have Steve Wright.
The joke I liked the best was him talking about I once played solitaire with tarot cards and 3 people died or something like that.
Yeah,
and that
was funny. Yeah, that's one of his funny routines.
Slayed me.
And then most of
most
his stuff are just simple one-liners like that.
Yeah, they're just simple. Some of it's observational humor that's so weird. You're like, why didn't I ever think of that before? And now I can't get it out of my head. Damn you, Stephen. He's really, really funny. I do adore him. Stephen Wright, my number 5.
My number 5. I don't know. This is again. We're gonna have not problem with the fact that he's a stand-up comic. He is a stand-up comic, but. This was one of those things when we first saw him is this going to be a sympathy thing or is it going to work for him? I was pretty amazed at truly how funny he was when we first saw him. And I have grown to be a huge fan of his web show. And he is original and funny, and on the web show, he uses his dog a lot as the humor. The show's called Dog Vlog. And it's like, but when Drew Lynch first walked out on the stage of America's Got Talent 2 seasons ago, same season as Tape Face, and started doing his comedy routine, it was very unique because Drew has a severe stutter due to an accident he had when he was 19. And he uses that to great effect. The story he told on the finals, where he's trying to talk to the operator on the phone, trying to tell her about the bill he's behind on, is so funny. I was on the floor. I've looked at his stand-up on there. We missed him when he was in town because we were totally broke. He was in town last summer. We wanted to try and get to see him, but we couldn't. We loved him so much, we added him to the Rising Stars list that year, which we'd never done with a comedian before, except Lucas Cruikshank, but he's an actor more than a comedian. And he is acting now and a little here and there, and he also is like most stutterers, he can sing beautifully without the stutter. He's got a beautiful voice. It's like he is the whole thing. And it takes a little time when you're watching his stand-up to get used to his speech pattern because of the stutter. But I'll tell you something, when you do, it is worth it because it is comedy gold. My number 5, Drew Lynch.
Okay. Number 4 on my list. Now we're getting higher into the echelons of stand-up.
Yep.
Number 4 on my list is someone that when he was at his heyday, I couldn't have seen his work. I was too young. Mm-hmm. My parents would have flipped. My parents didn't believe in capital punishment or anything. Capital punishment? Well, they didn't believe in capital punishment either. But they didn't
corporal punishment.
They didn't believe in corporal punishment. But I probably would have gotten at least threatened with the wooden spoon if I was the age when he was really popular and had been listening to his stuff. My number 4, the late, great, and definitely missed Richard Pryor. Richard's work is, in some cases, incredibly filthy and incredibly hilarious and incredibly honest. he is, he's talks about race relations in a way that makes some people uncomfortable, but, it is what it is, unfortunately. He talks about his own failings, which is really, really interesting. A lot of humor that stand-up comedians use, self-deprecation is always, it's a good go-to. People talk about, their height, their weight, their look, their whatever. If you are brave enough to talk about your own drug addiction and how you almost killed yourself through said drug addiction,
setting yourself on fire.
Yeah. That's wicked brave. That's really bearing your soul to people, and that's amazingly difficult to do. He was funny. He was just really and truly funny. I thought he was. His stand-up, I thought, there were some times where you'd watch it and you'd be laughing and then you'd go, that kind of a thing, but you'd go back to laughing again. At least I would. My number 4, Richard Pryor.
I never developed a taste for him. I like him as an actor, and I like him when he was with somebody else. Somebody he could play off well, like Johnny Carson and Merv Griffin. He was really good with both of them. But as his straight stand-up, I don't know. I found it amusing, but never on the floor, because it was just too shocking to me.
The weirdest thing was he's another one of those people when you're terribly tiny and you don't know who you are, you don't know who somebody is. Mm-hmm. I've seen footage from like YouTube and stuff like that of him on Sesame Street. Yeah. Like reading the alphabet and doing stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that.
He doesn't. He didn't.
Yeah.
Sadly enough.
But,
I mean, he was that generation's Lenny Bruce. If you were too small, you didn't really have a chance to know him.
No.
My number 4, my number 4 hides behind a bunch of dummies. Literally. Mm-hmm. And yet, playing the straight man to a figure is not an easy thing to do. You've got other people who have done ventriloquism really well. Back in the day, there was Willie Tyler and Lester. There was Ron Lucas. There was a number of other people.
Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy.
Yeah, going way back. Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy and Paul Winchell. But this guy took ventriloquism to all new heights. He has been the biggest selling comic act in America for the past 5 years, and except maybe for Kevin Hart, and there is a reason. He is hysterical, particularly when he has 3 figures. Especially, I like all of them, but 3 of them crack me up more than anything: Peanut, Walter, and Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. My number 4 is Jeff Dunham. Oh my Lord, this guy. And I mean, they beep some of his stuff when they run it on Comedy Central, because he does get filthy with the dummies. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff is really risque for this day and age, and he's going to really be thinking about his next shows in the Me Too era, what he's going to be saying in some places. Well, or having his figure say, especially Walter, who's a dirty old man. Pretty much.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say Walter's a dirty old man as much as Walter's a very bitter old man.
Well, yeah, but he makes nasty comments about women, and that's not going to be acceptable.
He makes nasty comments about his wife.
Yeah, well, no, about other women, too. Well, I mean,
I'd be more concerned with Ahmed, because that's kind of...
I kill you!
That whole thing is, I mean... Sometimes I kind of watch it and I'm like, oh man, I really shouldn't laugh at that.
I love Ahmed. He's so funny. And Jose.
I'm not touching that.
Jose, the jalapeno on a stick.
No, not touching that.
Particularly when he's with Peanut at the same time, doing all 3 of them, doing 2 of them and himself at the same time. Jeff is an amazing, talented guy. I don't know how he can keep all the voices straight.
No, I don't either.
We have actually seen Terry Fader screw up the voice a couple of times and then completely lose it. But I left Terry off because he's a musical. He's mostly musical comedy, and so Jeff had to take center stage because Jeff is just hilarious.
We'll give
4,
Darcy Lynn Farmer a few more years, and then she'll
get up there. She was great. Number 4, Jeff Dunham, and especially Peanut, Walter, and Ahmed, the Dead Terrorist.
My number 3, I think you've mentioned him. I think in your runner-up, my number 3 is Bill Engvall. Mm-hmm. Bill is...
I love Bill. He just wasn't quite there.
I do. I adore Bill. I think he's really, really, really funny. He's another one with a lot of observational humor stuff. I love his whole
Southern observational humor, which makes him even funnier a lot of times.
Yeah. I do love the whole "here's your sign" routine. I do have to kind of say that I kind of feel. I mean, obviously, a lot of comedians, they take their material from their lives and things around them.
Oh, yeah,
and
Bill's
stuff
best
like
material
that.
is about his family,
Yeah,
usually. I mean, it's just
incredibly
killingly funny.
Patient family. Because, I'm sorry, I don't know about the rest of the ladies out there listening to this, but I sure as hell wouldn't have wanted my dad to do a comedy routine where he's talking about having to buy pads for his daughter. I seriously think I would have joined a convent if that had happened.
Now, keep in mind that this is the daughter that was played by Jennifer Lawrence on his sitcom on TBS for 3 years.
Yeah.
Or 2 years.
Well, that's...
It was on.
Though I don't know how fictionalized
it was a fictionalized version, but that's the age of the daughter that they were talking about, yeah.
I love all his talk about being a husband and father, though. I mean, he does make it... He talks about things that you go... Oh, wow, that happened to me, too, or I know somebody that happened to, or my dad did that, too, or stuff, stuff like that. I just think that he's really funny, and he just seems like a genuinely nice person. I just think that he's a riot. I really do. So my number 3, Bill Engvall.
My number 3... I haven't seen very many comics live over the years. I've seen them live on TV. But in person, we've only seen a few of them. And this guy takes the cake. He was so funny in person. And we've enjoyed him. People don't... If you're not aware that he does stand up, a lot of people think of him as a comic actor. He does some serious acting, too. They think of him as a TV host type person. But they don't really realize that he, in between all that, is still out there like 26 weeks a year going through towns in middle America and on the coast doing his stand-up routines. And he is killingly funny. There is a reason why back in 1989 he was named the funniest teenager in Chicago. Fast forward all this time, and Hal Sparks never fails to leave me flat on the floor. We did have the opportunity to see him live about 10 years ago.
About that, yeah.
With our friends, we'd had Stacy and Jen with us. We went to the comedy club in town to see him. And, I mean, he had all of us, we had so many nose cola moments that night, it was not funny.
Yeah.
Just
and me completely rocking out when he did a killer, very quick, killer imitation of Tom Kiefer, the lead singer of Cinderella. I was like, woo! Metalhead.
Yeah. Well, at the time, Hal had the long hair again.
Yeah.
He let the hair out. You guys might have seen the picture that he took with us when we were there.
He was really nice.
He was super sweet. Now,
nice.
I don't agree with him in his view of the music industry because he has a band called 01. He's terrific. It's a metal band, a metal alternative band. It's terrific. But he's one of these copyright maximalists that just make me absolutely crazy. Because then your music doesn't get out there enough and you don't see it. And it's killingly bad because he's terrific in the music arena too. But he's got so many good routines. The whole thing about the 3 worst expressions
the
ever.
3 dumbest expressions and all, going into why they're dumb.
Yeah. One of them is, that's the last thing I need. And it's like, how
never
do you know
say
that?
never.
Never say never. If you've not, watch for your comedy clubs out there, and if he shows up, buy tickets because you will be guaranteed a really funny show. Number 3, Hal Sparks.
Okay. I have to be honest. Number 2 and number 1 are both. They're on here because
we have the same 2 people. I have a feeling.
We might. Yeah. I love both of them, and I have to be perfectly honest. Number 2 and number 1 are tinged with grief because both of them are no longer with us.
They are the same ones.
My number 2 favorite stand-up comedian is Robin Williams.
My number 2 is Robin Williams also.
What can you say? Watching Robin Williams on stage doing stand-up is like watching a hummingbird on helium trapped inside of something that they're desperately trying to get out of. It's just... It was just... He was non-stop. And that's when he wasn't on drugs.
Yeah.
You know, and he was another one that was very honest about the fact that, you know, he had a serious drug addiction for a while, and he worked it into his act and talked about it and was brutally honest about it.
And brilliantly funny.
And brilliantly,
achingly
funny.
I never really knew his stand-up because I was not really a big fan of Mork and Mindy. I watched it because all the kids in school watched it. But I didn't really like it. And then when his first comedy album, Reality What a Concept, came out in 1979, I was just buying albums, and I thought, I'm going to buy this and see what it's like, because I keep hearing what a great stand-up comic he is. And oh my God, that thing got played constantly, because I was on the floor. He was so funny. And just the great stuff. I mean, as he went through the years, he did 5 or 6 HBO or Showtime specials over the years that were just killingly funny, and he always went back to it, which I always loved. He's never got too big as an actor that he didn't love to go back to the clubs or to like a stage on stage and just cut loose for 90 minutes with his fans. It was just amazing.
And you could see the unbridled joy that he had when he was on stage, and you could see in his body language, and at the risk of sounding like some kind of hippy-dippy weirdo...
No, that's the next guy.
The next thing I'm going to say, I know some people out there are going to go, oh boy, here she goes. But you could definitely see in his aura the joy that he got from bringing smiles and laughter and happiness to other people. I mean...
And that was as an actor, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing to make people laugh.
And it's pretty ironic that he got all of his major awards in acting for dramatic roles.
Well, see, that's the thing. If you find out very early on, as if you are involved in acting, which I have been lucky enough to do.
Yeah, me too.
It is fun to make people laugh. It's a great feeling to make people laugh. It is, yes. It is even more fun to scare the living piss out of them.
I don't know. I didn't see the episode of Law & Order that he won an Emmy for, but
Robin proved that... Well, I wasn't even thinking of that episode, although he is amazing in...
You were talking about 1 Hour Photo, which he got an Oscar nomination for.
Law & Order Special Victims Unit, he was in an episode called Authority, and he was scary in that. He is downright Freddy Krueger, I'm never sleeping again, terrifying in 1 Hour Photo.
Although he won for what's the film with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck?
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting. He won his Oscar for Good Will Hunting, I think, didn't he? Or was it for Dead Poets? No, he was up for it. He didn't get what he won for that. Okay.
Robin was just such a special person, and when we lost him so, at such a young age to suicide, it was so difficult. It was really like he can't be gone. That just it didn't seem real.
If I can couch that, Robin had been diagnosed with Lewy syndrome dementia. Lewy body dementia. Right. And this is a devastating disease. It ended up killing Casey Kasem a few years ago. And your body just stops responding, stops working. And it is, for an improv comic like him, that had to be a death sentence.
Oh, I know.
And no pun intended. Robin also brought smiles as a voice artist. I mean, everybody knew him from Aladdin. He was killingly funny as both Ramon and Lovelace in Happy Feet. And I mean, he was just all around one of the best ever comics.
Yeah. And it's definitely still missed.
Yeah.
So my number 2 and your number 2, Robin Williams.
Let me tell you about our number 1. I was sick with the flu one day when I first saw this gentleman. I was 6 years old, and he was appearing on the Mike Douglas show. It was an afternoon talk show. And he came out, and he was sitting there at the desk. He had a prop desk doing fake news, basically. Phony news. Like, that stuff was not... That was old hat, although I didn't know it, for people like the two Ronnies and Benny Hill, and British acts did it all the time. But he sat there and delivering these just really crazy lines, and then he brought out the hippy-dippy weatherman. And even sick, I mean, I had 102 fever. I laughed. He made me laugh. And from that point on, George Carlin was my all-time favorite comic.
Yeah, my number one favorite stand-up comedian is also George Carlin.
George Carlin was the world's best observer. His uncanny way of noticing ridiculous things and getting 20 minutes out of them, like football versus baseball.
The differences between football and baseball.
The differences between cats and dogs. The whole A Place for My Stuff routine, which really, that brought him to another, second generation. And of course, in between, he was acting too and getting noticed there. But, I mean, the man was just brilliant.
He was.
Unfortunately, as he got older, he did get a little bit bitter. He had lost his wife to cancer and seemed, around the time his sitcom was on Fox. And she had also produced most of his early HBO stuff. So when he came back in the 90s, he was still funny, but there was an even more bitter edge to it. And yet you'd sit there and you'd think to yourself, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but my God, it's funny.
Yeah.
That's the kind of comedy that he did.
Yeah.
And it made him just terrific. You have several of his albums.
I do. I first saw George Carlin. This is going to sound very strange. I first saw George Carlin, I believe it was on Nickelodeon. Way back in the day.
When they had clips of turkey on turkey television?
Yeah. They would have, or sometimes they would have clips in between shows.
Well, you had to be in high school by that point.
No, junior high. I was junior high.
So it must have been earlier than turkey television. I didn't premiere until 84. So, yeah.
So, I remember seeing him on there, and I remember being like, this guy is crazy. I want more of this stuff. And I would go to our local video store, and they had a lot of his stand-up. They would get it in all the time, and I would instantly be like, mine, and,
And bring the VHS home and pop it into the VCR.
Yes. After walking uphill both ways barefoot. in a blizzard, so I think we hit I think we ticked off all the boxes on that. So you all don't know how you don't know how good you have it, you young whippersnappers. Get off my lawn, blah blah. So anyway,
got your dad chair anywhere near? Yikes! Shades of Roundhouse. Anyway,
George just had a way to just literally bring me to breathlessness from laughing.
Me too.
His whole routine about the difference between dogs and cats, and talking about how a cat will run into something and be like, boom, I meant to do that. I meant to do that.
And the cat behind the couch and go, effing meow, man.
Yeah. I just sat there and laughed till I cried.
Yeah. But that's from I think my favorite of all of his specials, which is Carlin at Carnegie. Isn't it?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows you how deeply ingrained somebody's routine, and one routine is ingrained in the public consciousness when it winds up on a cartoon, or it winds up being hinted at in a cartoon decades after it was originally done.
What do you mean? There
was an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where SpongeBob and Patrick learned a bad word. And Mr. Krabs is berating them and saying there's 11 words you're supposed to never say. And Squidward says, I thought it was only 7. And Mr. Krabs says, not if you're a sailor. But the whole...
Well, he himself had revised it to 10 later on.
The whole 7 words, that was a reference to George Carlin's 7 dirty words you can't say on TV. Now, this is back... That whole routine was back pre-cable. So... you really couldn't say this stuff on TV.
Because all you had was the 3 major networks, PBS, and a few independents.
Right.
Until 75 when HBO launched.
Yes, kids. There were actually a time when you couldn't say the F word on TV after 10 o'clock.
Well, you still can't say it on TV. You can get away with it on cable, and you can get away with it on the internet, but you can't get away with it... And not all cable, just pay cable.
Yeah.
Like HBO and stuff like that.
But that's what I mean, though. I mean, that whole routine is decades old.
And it's still true and still funny.
And if somebody's parents were watching that cartoon with their kids, they would still instantly know what they were talking about, and they would instantly crack up laughing.
Yep.
You mentioned he did get a little bit, his humor got a little darker and a little more bitter after his wife passed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it happened so suddenly, and I don't think, I mean, she was diagnosed and she was dead within like 3 months. It was like a fast thing.
So you can understand the bitterness, especially, and a lot of his routines seem to be just flat out railing against God.
Mm-hmm. Well, he'd done that from the beginning too.
Yeah.
He was an avowed atheist, and the only one that I knew that was even remotely hilarious. So,
but you know, he was really, when he was on and could make you laugh until you thought you were going to cry.
Or pee yourself.
Yeah. I was not going to go there. Thank you for doing it. So my number one favorite stand-up comedian, George Carlin.
George was just an amazing, amazing writer and gifted person because he gave a lot of time to charities over the years, and it was amazing.
I also have to say, oh my God, do yourself a favor. If you're in a library and you see a copy of one of his books, check it out of the library. Yeah. Don't sit there and read it.
Because you won't be able to keep a straight face.
Yes, because sitting there in the library reading a book and giggling will get you some very strange looks. Yes, I'm speaking from personal experience.
He has some very strange observations in his books.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's recap our top 10s.
Okay. Going on my list of favorite comedians from 10 to 1, Brad Garrett, Mike McDonald, Kevin Meaney, Mario Cantone, Jeff Altman, Stephen Wright, Richard Pryor, Bill Engvall, Robin Williams, and George Carlin.
And my top 10 from 10 to 1, Stephen Wright, Gallagher, Carol Leifer, Joan Rivers, Tapeface, Drew Lynch, Jeff Dunham, Hal Sparks, Robin Williams, and George Carlin.
Okay.
These are the nice thing about all of these people, you can probably find at least one show by every one of them on either cable or Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely clips on YouTube.
And those clips all over YouTube. But some of the whole specials, the only exception might be, Drew's isn't out yet. Drew, you got clips online, but he did do an hour-long special that's going to air on, I think, Cinemax later this year. Mm-hmm. And so that's funny, but, and Hal's stuff is out there on DVD. I don't know if it's on streaming or not. He probably wouldn't let it on streaming because he doesn't like that stuff. So, but the rest of them are all good. Okay. So, let's see here. What do we got to do? Well, let me tell you, first of all, once again, if you'd like to get in on this, we would love to do your list ideas on the show. Mm-hmm. It'd be a challenge because we can challenge ourselves, but it's always funner when listeners challenge us, and that's at front row at PNRNetworks.com. Give us a list idea, top 10 or 2 top 5s, and we will, if we do it, we will put it on the air for you. We will name you on the show. We will put you on the site, and you'll get a little prize of some sort.
Yes. Since it's my turn,
it is your
to
turn.
Pick next week's topic. So this is going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm. You're going to give me another one I can't do?
No.
You're an expert at that.
No. I think you won't have any problem with this one.
Okay.
The topic for next week's show: top 10 WTF music videos. Videos that just made you sit there, and once the video was over, you're going, "What the beep did I just watch?" Whether it was because...
there's a lot of those. It's going to be hard to pick a top 10.
I mean, some of them are, it could be because the video was strange. It could be because the video was disturbing.
Or just bad.
So that's going to be our list for next week. Each of us are going to do our top 10 WTF music videos. And I hope that you guys will check out the other shows that are part of our little island of misfit toys here at our little podcast family. Mm-hmm. They would include our movie podcast, which is on a little bit of a mini hiatus right now.
We'll be back on Father's Day next week
Subject
from Sunday.
Cinema will return. Mm-hmm. But you can check out our older shows if you want to.
You sure can. There's over 650 of them out there floating around for the last several years. We are the oldest roots podcast about film and movies on the internet.
Wow. And our other shows are out there as well, and we hope you'll check them out.
Front Row 5 and 10 is, of course, normally on Thursdays, and we'll probably get back to that in the next couple of weeks. You can also check out our mini shows. 3 Minute Weekend on Friday covers all the new releases in the U.S., and on Tuesday Digidex, all the home video releases in the U.S.
I have 2 shows of my own, including Platinum Rose's Garden. Which
Off for the
is
summer, but you can catch all the older ones.
Yep, you can catch it if you'd like. It's my Supernatural podcast. You can look back on season 13 or later, if you'd like, at PlatinumRosesGarden.com. I also have Ring Around the Rosie at ringaroundtherosie.net, which is my wrestling podcast. This week is part 1 of a topic that I thought would be kind of fun to look at. I'm looking at times that wrestling crossed the line, whether it was an angle that was really crazy or something happened in the ring that was completely unexpected. And I also have the results for this past week's Raw and SmackDown, and that's at ringaroundtherosie.net.
Catastrophe Vortex, my individual show, which normally airs on Mondays, will be back in July. I'm working on a new format for it. And I hope that you guys will check it out when it comes back at CatastropheVortex.com. There's also Cavebabble with Eric and Valerie Lyon. When they're doing their on a mini hiatus, trying to figure out what they're doing, but their older shows, which are all worth listening to, are at Cavebabble.com. And Aunt B's Nerd Grotto is Anthony Lamberti's new video show, and you will want to check that out on YouTube. Go to Aunt B's. What did I just say? Aunt B's Nerd Grotto, and check that out. They are wrapping up Comic Grotto, Anthony tells me. So we'll talk more about that at another time. And don't forget, when it ever gets up, I haven't figured. I lost the YouTube case. I still don't know how that happened. When I'm clearly fair use. The Kirkham Report, which is going to be my music oriented web show on YouTube, will be making its premiere sometime in the next 4 weeks. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, because I'm going to fight these bastards, but we'll figure out what we're going to do, and then I'll tell you exactly when it goes up, but you can check other blogs and older stuff at thekirkhamreport.com. Is that all the shows?
Well, there's also Manhattan Hammerdown.
Manhattan Hammerdown, as it happened, is available. By the way, you keep saying look it up on Google on your show. It has its own website, ManhattanHammerdown.com. So you can go over there and look it up. And it runs 10 minutes longer than the original movie. It's our take on what happened in New York, besides Rob and Friends, when Clover attacked.
Yes.
It's the 10th anniversary Cloverfield special.
It was a lot of,
you will take it out.
It was a lot of fun to do. TC wrote
6 months in the making, and it was a lot of fun.
TC wrote it, and we all performed it, and we hope you'll check it out.
And it's a lot of fun, and I hope you like it.
I think that's about it.
WTF music videos. Oh, this is going to be fun. Because I can think of like 5 of them right off the top of my head that I'm like, what the hell?
Yep. You'll have to come back and check that out next week.
Yep.
But that's next week, so come back then. I'm Kim Brown.
I'm TC Kirkham.
And we hope we can count on you to come back next week and count up another list with us right here on Front Row 5 and 10.
Count on it.
You've been listening to Front Row 5 and 10 with Kim Brown and TC Kirkham.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.